My name is Lex, and this week on Spidey Signals, me and my co-host Alex discuss Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the frog-like features of Tobey Maguire, and the combat effectiveness of goblin masks. Get ready to go on the ultimate spin, because it's time for Spidey Signals. Welcome back to Spidey Signals, the podcast where two guys with the same name talk about Spider-Man movies. I'm Lex.
And I'm Alex.
Last week we had our introductory episode, but this week it's time to get into the meat and potatoes. We are talking about Spider-Man.
What a surprise. What a shock.
What a shock. We're talking about Spider-Man. So let's just open up here with some basic facts about the movie. This movie released on May 3rd of 2002. I believe I think I would have turned 3 that year.
I was freshly 6, just a few months prior.
I did not see this movie in the theater.
Nor did I.
Yeah, I was just too young. I think I didn't see movies until like 2003.
Mm.
But yeah, it's directed by Sam Raimi. He was fresh, obviously, off of the Evil Dead movies. He had done a string of more independent dramas and stuff like that in the mid 90s. But then he got picked up for this movie. It's written by David Koepp, who's written quite a few other movies, including both Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh,
So make of that what you will.
someone had to write it.
Somebody had to write that shit. As for our cast, we've got Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn / the Green Goblin, James Franco as Norman's son Harry Osborn, Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben, Rosemary Harris as Aunt May, and of course, J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. On the music front, we've got Danny Elfman doing the score. In the past, he'd done scores for other superhero movies like Batman and Batman Returns. But the music in this movie is really fucking great.
It really, really is.
It's really good. This movie had a budget of $139 million and made $825 million. This movie made a fuckload of money.
It really, yeah. It was a milestone movie.
I think it was like the first movie to make like $100 million in its first weekend.
Yeah, I have some bits about that when we get to my super fun trivia segment.
Yeah, like this movie was like a huge event when it came out. So do we have any personal experiences with this movie?
As I mentioned in our introductory episode 0, this specific movie was the first movie I ever owned on DVD. I grew up wearing out VHS tapes because I had very few of them, and I would watch them repeatedly. I want to say I went through 2 copies of Toy Story. That one got a lot of love in my household. But when it came to DVDs, those were, fresh and modern, and this is what movies are going to be from now on. And the first one I ever saw was Spider-Man, and I was completely blown away by it. I don't know whatever happened to that one, but maybe it's in DVD heaven now, where all the e-waste goes. Um, I did not see it in the theater, but I very shortly thereafter got the GameCube port of the Spider-Man film game.
I just recently played that game. I think it's pretty good.
It's fine. It's fine. It's got a lot of fun secrets, and it's got a lot of fun like takes of different villains in that scenario and timeline and universe before 2
Yeah.
was an idea. It's a whole thing. But as far as Spider-Man 1 goes, yeah, it's a very nostalgic movie for me. It's a very early. It's the first Sam Raimi movie I ever saw. Anybody that knows me in real life knows that the Evil Dead franchise is probably my one true love. Evil Dead 2, I think, is my favorite movie, hands down. Period. I'm a longtime fan of Raimi's work. and it blew my mind getting into his horror movies. Like, this is the guy that made Spider-Man made this, the guy that made the goofy ass Green Goblin movie. As time goes on, it just shows more and more to me, like, oh yeah, no, Raimi made this.
Yeah, it's kind of bonkers to think that like 1981, this guy makes The Evil Dead, and it's like this weird, independent, gross ass horror movie, and then like 20 years later, he's making multi-million dollar superhero movies, and I guess that sort of reflects now with Marvel and DC movies picking up like random indie directors and being like, "You're gonna make a superhero movie now."
David F. Sandberg, the guy that made Annabelle, now doing Shazam, that kind of thing. It's not an uncommon trend.
Yeah, John Watts, who makes the new Spider-Man movies, he made a couple of indie movies. Used to be a guy on YouTube that made stuff. Yeah, it's very interesting that that's become more of a common thing. But also, we're going to get into this later. This is very much a Sam Raimi movie.
Intensely a
This is
Sam
this
Raimi
is
movie.
this is a Sam Raimi movie from top to bottom.
It's got screams, it's got slashes, it's got
It's very much his movie, and there's a common complaint that I agree with a lot of the time, that a lot of modern superhero movies, the director's vision is sort of lost when it comes to all the corporate interests and what the brand wants.
mhm.
That a lot of what the individual directors' uh, ideas and what their style is sort of lost in the mix. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But this movie is just a really good example of what can happen when you do have a director that has a really focused vision.
For sure. You'll notice nobody calls Fantastic Four. I don't even know who directed the Fantastic Four
Tim
duology.
Story,
No one ever goes, "Oh, well, in stories, Fantastic Four," but everybody goes, "Well, in Raimi's Spider-Man."
yes,
There's that qualifier. There's that pedigree.
it's how these three we're gonna go as we go through the podcast. We'll compare the three series, and they're defined by different things. Obviously, the MCU movies are defined by the universe that they live in. These movies are defined by Raimi's vision, and the amazing movies are the amazing movies. But as for my personal experiences, like I said, I was too young to see this movie. I was like 3. But I did get the DVD and I watched the shit out of that DVD. Do you remember on the DVD they had like tips and tricks for the game on it, and like Bruce
Yeah.
Campbell would narrate
Yeah,
them?
he would. Yeah, I remember that's the first time I heard the phrase. It was either inner domain or inner sanctum.
Oh
The
my
way he said
god,
it, I
yes.
distinctly remember that phrase. I remember the DVD as well had it was like a digital rogues gallery. I remember like there were like little CGI Shocker and Goblin you could like go through and be like, oh, here's their backstory, here's their first appearance. It was like on a disc 2 kind of
Yeah.
thing. I really, really, that was a golden era for special
I was
features.
a big special features kid. I watched
Oh
special
yeah.
features more often than I actually watched the movies.
All of those mimetic episode 1, 2, and 3 prequel, like all the memes that came from the behind the scenes Star Wars ones, those were like those I saw more than the prequels themselves, I think.
I
Uh,
have a theory about the prequels and these movies, but I'll get into
oh,
that later.
of course, of course.
But Alex, do you
Hmm.
want to take it away with the plot?
Yeah, the movie kicks off with incredible, incredible Danny Elfman score
Oh
and
my
Alex
god.
and Alex Ross art. That
Alex Ross art, I don't think it wasn't even until the second movie.
Oh, well, maybe I was just had nostalgia goggles on. There was some good stuff. No, you're right. I thought I remembered 1 or 2, but no, that is the second one. Wow.
Yeah,
We
the
get
first
we get
movie has
Alex
like
Ross
this like CGI stuff that looks
right, the
really
hand,
weird and
the
cool.
3D model of Spider-Man. If we get Alex Ross on the podcast, we got 3 Alexes.
Yeah, we get Alex Ross on the
Please
podcast.
come on the podcast, Alex Ross.
Alex Ross, if
Um,
you're here, please come on our podcast.
there's some phenomenal theatrical cut Blade Runner style narration from Peter.
Oh my
You know,
god.
some serious
This fucking narration.
seriously.
I want to make a comment right now. Tobey Maguire in this movie is kind of awful. He sounds like he's on Ambien all the time.
Um, yeah, that believe me, I have some notes about that. A lot of people like to argue who plays the best Spider-Man versus who plays the best Peter. And a thing that comes up a lot is that people love Tobey's Spider-Man, but a lot of people don't buy him as Peter. And I feel like I'm one of those people.
For me, it's sort of the reverse. I think he does a good Peter. He does a good Peter before the spider bite,
which is like 5 minutes.
which is like 5 minutes after he
this
gets bitten by
movie.
the spider. And he becomes Spider-Man.
That's an interesting take.
I feel like Peter should, I don't know, like in the comics especially, after he becomes Spider-Man, he gains a little more self-confidence. He like changes and grows as a person.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire throughout all 3 of these movies is just like a complete goober.
Total loser.
Total loser. I could beat the shit out of this guy even if he was
even
Spider-Man.
with the superpowers.
Even with the superpowers.
I'm looking at my notes right now. The first time you see him on the bus, I wrote down sweaty, Chris Chan-esque. Someone yell, "You're so lame, Parker."
I wrote, these are the oldest high schoolers on the planet. Tobey Maguire looks like he's 47 years old in this movie.
Which brings me to my next plot point. I love the absurdity of rich Harry Osborn being Peter's friend in this movie, because it's hard to pull off that kind of thing without seeming, Ned and Peter in the MCU. Oh, well, they're just friends, and we never give them backstory. They give so much backstory to the fact that, oh, wow, my dad loves you so much, and you're my friend, and you're so smart, and I'm a really fucking stupid idiot. But that does ring true to the source material a lot. It's easy to trim and forget about side characters, and Harry Osborn has gotten the short end of the stick as a character in other franchises. Or rather, at other iterations of this franchise, and it as far as that character goes, I think Franco could have, there could have been worse.
I feel like one of the things that this movie does get really right is just how much Norman fucking hates Harry's guts.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to portray. That's not a lot of the thing. The people like to remember the Green Goblin. He's the funny guy on the glider that throws the bombs and he goes, "I'll get you, Spider-Man." Well, he also hates his son.
He just fucking hates his son.
He just hates that idiot so much.
Willem Dafoe, who we will also get into, who is a goddamn national treasure in this movie.
For sure. So many memes.
He is so good at the passive aggression. He does a
good job of towing the line of the insane goblin, the timid, "Oh no, don't hurt me, Norman," and also like the stone cold broomer and "Get out of here, Norman." Good stuff.
Oh my god! All right.
I love the awkward. Oh, she wasn't waving at me; she was waving at other people thing. Because 20 years later, I still die inside watching that because it's so real, it's so visceral. I cringe more at that than anything else in Sam Raimi's filmography.
Yes.
We get to the museum sequence, and one thing I like a lot about this iteration of the franchise is that at first I thought it was implied, but it's outright stated at the end of the sequence that this spider that Peter is bitten by is an amalgamation of lots of different spiders' abilities, jumping, reflexes, etc. Whereas, in the original source material, it's radioactive.
It's radioactive because it's the 60s. Everything's fucking radioactive.
So I like that they kind of put that on its head a little bit. They did a little more than just, okay, it's 2000. What do we do?
And I think that's how they do it in the Ultimate Comics. It's like genetically engineered by Oscorp.
They really play up the blue and red thing, which I liked.
I do like that.
They name drop Spider Sense, which everyone.
It's a dumb scene, but let's go with it.
It's all there. It strikes me as odd, but Peter tells absolutely nobody that a potentially deadly spider bites him at the exotic spider exhibit.
It was the fucking Bush administration. He didn't have health insurance.
Yeah, he stumbles home. We see the classic Raimi car very, very briefly.
Yes.
He comes home and Uncle Exhibition is, giving his spiel about, I lost my job, I'm retired.
I'm on my ass, May.
I hate being old. What's a computer?
I hate being old.
Uncle Ben gets an iPad. I would love to see that.
Calm down. Stop, May. I'm watching my iPad.
Peter seems completely like he just hit like a gravity bong before he comes home.
He's just conked out.
Like tying back to what you said earlier about about Toby's performance being a little mellow, a little too mellow
sleepy.
for the movie. Peter just seems completely like wasted when he comes home, and his aunt and uncle are just like, "Oh well, what a good boy, let him nap." Um, Norman, who we've seen for precisely 2 scenes before this, does some experimental gas for profit, like a fucked up Elon Musk.
Yes. They want to. He's like working on a contract for the military, and they're like making performance enhancing drugs or whatever.
If you're
And
familiar
like,
with the comics, you have a grasp on who Norman is, like the precise bastard attitude that he has. You know
yes,
what I mean? But if you have no familiarity with the comics and you're just watching this, all you know is that he's a businessman and he has a terse relationship with his son. The very next thing you see of him, he is like subjecting himself to this experiment because like his check is on the line. You know,
because
his
don't be
name
a
is on the
coward.
damn company. He didn't
Don't
call it, Goblin Corp. He called it Oscorp.
Oscorp, motherfucker.
This is his ass on the line, so he's gonna go huff that green juice. Military contract, be damned. Next scene, Peter wakes up and can see. He's a muscle-bound freak instead of a tiny twink, like when he went to sleep.
He's kind of ripped in this movie.
Yeah, Maguire
Willem
had a.
Dafoe is kind of ripped too. That's kind of fucked up.
If I read correctly, Maguire was eating like 4 to 6 protein meals a day on top of his like exercise regimen to be Spider-Man, and it's like, God damn, dude.
What do you think is like the sexual aura of like Willem Dafoe in this movie? Was he like also getting super shredded?
I like to believe he was already that shredded, but well,
I heard Willem Dafoe had an 8-pack in this movie.
Peter Parker has a bizarre pervert window in his room that is at the
yeah.
exact same position and size as MJ's. I refuse to believe that they act in this movie like they've never had a conversation prior to this week, despite being the same age, going to the same school, and with pervert windows in both of their homes aimed at each other. I refuse to believe that these characters never spoke, no matter how dorky and no matter how popular she is. But that's the case. That's what we're told.
I think the Peter and MJ stuff in this movie it's really cute. I like their relationship in this movie.
It's very Hollywood romance.
It's very Hollywood romance. The second and third movie do things to Mary Jane Watson that I will talk about.
Yeah,
that I will talk about when we get to that episode.
I feel like for a lot of people
in this movie, I think it's fine.
Kirsten Dunst is a lot of people's definitive MJ. I think more so than even like some of the comic iterations.
She definitely looks the part.
There's arguably more movie fans than there are comic fans at this point. More people who have seen all 3 movies and have read really any like notable runs. You know what I mean? Clone Saga, One More Day, stuff like that.
God, who the fuck would want to read One More Day?
It's just something that came to mind.
You're just pulling shit out of your ass.
So yeah, Kirsten Dunst. I know a lot of people personally that don't like her performance in this, but honestly, I would have rather seen this than. Sam Raimi is not very, very gifted in the romance department. He has a habit of like, Evil Dead, she's dead. I killed her off in the first 15 minutes. He's a very dudes rock filmmaker, very Carpenter style.
He's a dudes rock filmmaker.
He has a hard time writing women and directing women. Maybe
I don't know a whole lot about the writing style of Mr. David Koepp, but it's serviceable. It's completely serviceable.
What I will say is that given the 2 characters and the differences between the 2 characters, I would rather have seen Raimi write MJ, or rather, direct MJ for this movie than try to take on Gwen Stacy. Because I feel like that would just be another immediate, I killed her in the first 15 minutes.
And then they try to do it in the third movie, and then that's a whole different thing.
MJ's parents in this movie are comical caricatures of your average New York City redneck, which is a thing apparently.
Yes.
They're horrible, horrible trailer trash. Peter, they have a quick conversation outside where she briefly flirts maybe with him and then leaves because her boyfriend has a car, and that's all that matters. It's Sam Raimi's trying to say.
Yeah, he's like a again, this is another goober moment from Peter where he's like, yeah, I loved you when we were in the first grade play. Yeah.
I love her so much and I'm so smart and I have superpowers, but I don't have a car. Damn.
damn. Oh my god, the fucking
He has,
car.
he has superpowers and talks to himself about like he has a fake conversation with himself, like he is talking to MJ, like outside the bus the next morning. Goober is such a good word. He's
Goober moment.
such a dork. He really does a good job of playing the dork Peter Parker.
Yeah.
We then cut to Willem Dafoe passed out like a coked out David Bowie, being told about his crimes and the murder. Do they say he was murdered or missing?
They said that they say that he's been killed.
So he just left the body
and that
there.
they said that he's been killed, and the glider and combat suit have been stolen.
Yes, and he's like, "Wow, who could have done that? It wasn't me. That was bizarre. Whoa, some kind of goblin." Which so it brings me to a highly divisive and highly contested part. We were coming to this fork in the road eventually, Alex. Organic web shooters.
Okay.
Love them or hate them, here they are.
Do you have anything to say about the organic webs?
My only concern is like the extremely pedantic. Like, is it a gland in his wrist that just formed? Does he have a sack of web in his wrist? There's no answer that isn't disgusting when it comes to like justifying it to me. In my head, I accept it because that's just how this movie franchise, that this iteration of the franchise has always been. There is no arguing just because it's there. You know what I mean? I don't love it. I wish they had given Peter the opportunity to shine and, you know, show some technical prowess with his brain, as opposed to just, wow, he's smart and good at school. I feel like that's more fundamental to his character, like his inventive nature, rather than his like, I'm gonna go to my room and listen to the Smiths. That's
sad boy.
Yeah, why couldn't we have a little more of that?
I definitely agree with you. I think organic webs are gross. They're really gross, especially when he's like pulling the fork away from his wrist, and it's like, ugh.
It makes me wonder, like, how did nobody see him and that happen?
How the fuck does nobody know this guy is Spider-Man?
Nobody knows. Down. I can send you a picture on my paper. I have written down. How does nobody question the weird shit Peter does that day in correlation with the rise of Spider-Man?
Yeah, I have it written twice in my notes. How the hell does nobody know that this guy is Spider-Man?
He punches a guy halfway across the room. He shoots a bunch of web all over the place.
He does like a Metroid flip in the air while he's fighting Flash.
And then he jumps off of a building and hits a billboard in front of like 5 o'clock traffic.
But yeah,
it would have been fucking weird. Like within an hour in the iPhone world. Like, hey, this is Spider-Man, I think.
I think this guy might be Spider-Man. Yeah, about the organic webs, I definitely agree with you. I think the reason that they did it was because they just didn't want to explain. They already don't explain how he made the costume; he just made it. But they didn't want to explain how he like built the web shooters. But I'm like, that's kind of really important because that shows that Peter is.
It does not take long.
Peter's greatest strength is how smart he is. Mm-hmm. They do it even in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, which, spoiler alert, I do not think are good. They have him make the web shooters, and in the MCU, they have him make the web shooters because it shows that Peter is smart, and it shows him that he's a clever guy.
Clever is a good word for it. He's not only smart, but he's inventive. He doesn't only know things, but he's good at coming out of ways to get out of situations. Be it in his own life or being buried under a ton of rubble.
Yeah, and in this movie, he's just sort of like, oh yes, you got the science award, good job, smart kid. And then he just doesn't really do a whole lot of. Yeah, he makes like a passing reference to like working for Dr. Connors, which is cool. But and then he like goes to college in the later movies. But he's just sort of, I guess, like background smart. His intelligence is not really played up as much as I would have liked.
Right, we're not shown his smarts as much as we're told he's smart.
Yeah.
So we get the fight scene at school. We get and we get a quick little, it's very reminiscent to me of the original Superman movies, the when he debuts the wall crawl, and
Oh my god, that scene is fucking awesome. I love that scene.
I can't explain specifically what I mean, but it feels very reminiscent to me of like the
Yeah,
feeling.
it's very Donner Superman trying out the powers.
Exactly.
It's that whole scene where it zooms in on his fingertips and the little hairs come out, which is weird but also cool. He climbs up the wall. That scene is awesome, and the music swells. Ugh,
Feels very timeless and very old school.
it's so good.
Peter designs his own, original wrestler suit. He wants to go into the wrestling ring, fight Bonesaw.
He wants to go in the wrestling ring to get $3,000 to buy a car for MJ, and like they superimpose her face and a car flying into the screen.
I will say I've heard stupider motivations for characters.
This is a very silly movie.
Peter's an incel at this point, and
Peter's an incel.
He's doing some wacky shit for a class 5 femoid or whatever it is those guys say. It's some kind of motivation, and it gets us to the point where it's costume design time. And not only is Peter brilliant at science, he's also the best comic artist in the world, apparently.
Oh hell yeah! He's going to comic books
with some Sharpies, and it's like, dude, what can't you do? Get this guy a guitar. You know what I mean?
This guy's a fucking Renaissance man.
He's wonderful. Did the Spider Bite make him a gifted artist? I'm wondering that right now. Did he do stick figures the day before?
I do. He's like fucking coming. He's like drawing like Mona Lisa shit. I do think that it's really cool that when he's like coloring in the suit, he's like add more color and he's coloring in the suit, and they had the spider crawl by. I think it's cool that he incorporated the red and blue of the spider into the suit. I think that's a cool way to sort of explain the color scheme.
It's kind of a sucker punch because that's a great edit that you're talking about right there. It immediately preceded just minutes before by the MJ in the car cut.
Yeah, and they do there's lots of really weird
seconds apart even.
There's lots of really silly edits in this. This is a very silly movie, like I said. There's lots of weird, silly transitions and edits, and part of that is Raimi's style, and I guess part of it is to like recapture the sort of 60s Silver Age comic stuff, which works sometimes, like tone-wise, but when it's like we're gonna have the flashing skulls, it's like, come on.
Exactly. So Peter he designs a cool suit, but just for the for the sake of the wrestling match, he's wearing his tracksuit special, his spray painted cool. Hoodie. It's decent. The what is his wrestling name? The Human Spider.
Human Spider.
The wrestling match. Just prior to that, we get our final conversation with Ben and Peter. It's very, very poignant and sobering.
And that conversation is really, really well done. I wouldn't change a thing about it.
I think it's for the sake of not sounding like a meme or anything. I think it's iconic cinema. That conversation. It transcends being a Spider-Man movie.
It's the gold standard.
Mm-hmm. Even though Ben doesn't have the details of like the precise thing Peter is going through rather. He manages to give him advice that like resonates to his core and like.
And you can tell he like really cares.
Yeah, while he might not understand, Peter, you're Spider-Man and you have Spider-Man powers. He knows that Peter is a good kid and he's going through some shit, and we all think we should have an Uncle Ben in our lives. We should all be so lucky.
Yeah.
Phenomenal performance.
Cliff Robertson is really good in this movie.
Yeah, he's also, isn't he in 2 and 3 very briefly?
He is in 2 and 3. They do trot him out for 3.
Yeah, that bought him some cafeteria dinners for a while.
Poor guy.
But yeah, very, very prolific conversation there. I think it was interesting. I think a lot of people attribute that quote to Uncle Ben because of this movie. I think it was purely like dialogue box narration. And
yeah, it was a dialogue box at the end of Amazing Fantasy 15.
And I think since then, most versions of the story have Uncle Ben having said it.
Because it just makes more sense.
Yeah, that's just. I wonder if that was Raimi's call, and if so, that's like a mark that touched every like imagination of the character since. That's
you know what? It's not a bad mark to have.
No, not really. Absolutely stunning Bruce Campbell cameo in this movie.
Bruce Campbell, the king.
My favorite of the three, if you ask me. I like the waiter.
I would also
I
say
like
it's
the
the
waiter
best of the
I
three.
like the usher. He gets a. I wish Bruce Campbell actually announced wrestling matches. Then I'd watch wrestling. Great guy. Until he's not. This was recorded in 2020 for posterity's sake. Asterisk.
Of course. We're future proofing this podcast. Do not worry. If Bruce Campbell does some fucked up shit, we denounce that. All right, we're good.
Alongside Macho Man Randy Savage, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
I love that he's not just Macho Man Randy Savage, he's Bonesaw.
Bonesaw is ready!
Phenomenal stuff.
Oh
Great
God.
original character. I like to think Bonesaw should be in every version of the origin story.
I don't even think they do the wrestling stuff in Amazing Spider-Man.
No, they just kind of cut to him like swinging around the warehouse and being cool and being Spider-Man.
That's a whole different thing. We'll get into that later.
So, the wrestling match goes the way it goes. Peter gets the great, iconic, missed the part where that's my problem line. Lets the would-be thief go, who then attempts to...
That scene is really great.
There's a car chase in the Raimi classic, the Delta. A lot of bullets get fired through the ceiling. We
get to see the awful CGI in this movie.
Yes, which apparently some executives thought it was actually Tobey Maguire doing all his stunts in this movie, but that I would love to be a fly on that wall here. No, you fucking moron.
The CGI in this movie is very bad, but I really enjoy it. It looks like a horrible PS2 game.
Yeah, but that looks like a fun PS2 game. The killer is unmasked. It turns out, he's the killer. He killed Uncle Ben. Peter feels, the remorse, the regret, and that shame. I think Raimi captures the spirit of the unmasking really well with putting his own, brutal twist on it. Because if I'm not mistaken, in the comic, Peter just kind of knocks the guy unconscious, and the frame
and he hands him over to the cops.
And the guy dies in this movie.
That's really Peter just like straight up kills a guy in this movie.
Spider-Man doesn't kill him. The guy dies because of Spider-Man, if that makes sense.
That's still fucked up.
Peter could have webbed him. Peter could have grabbed him. Peter knew with his spider sense this guy's going to trip and fall out the window, and he just let it happen. So I don't know, if what your ethics, what your philosophies are, listeners out there. I don't know if you think Peter killed the guy or not, because it's a whole thing in later movies. Spider-Man doesn't kill people. It's a brutally Raimi twist on the story without mistake. The guy's not speared or anything. It's not gross. It's just it's different. It's an alternate take on it, and I like that.
The music when Peter comes home from the wrestling match and hugs Aunt May, that music is really fucking good. That little main theme sting is really good. I love the really sharp transition from the dramatic death of Uncle Ben, that whole scene, to Green Goblin blew up a bunch of guys.
Yeah, I didn't have much to say about that scene.
And then right after that, right before J.K. Simmons, is my favorite scene in the movie. It's the big montage where Spider-Man is he makes his costume and then he's going out doing stuff, fighting crime. People are like, "Oh, I hate this guy."
I see the web and it's his signature, and I know Spider-Man was here.
The guy protects us, he protects the people.
Some kind of freaky Lou or something. Wackadoo.
He stinks, and I don't like him.
I love montages of just Spider-Man doing stuff. Mm-hmm. All three of the series do that. There's one in Amazing Spider-Man 2, there's one in Homecoming, and there's one in this. Yeah. And they're all really good.
Part of the mythos and the mystique of Spider-Man is his intense cultural relevancy to Queens, to New York. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's intensely a local, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's not.
And it's
Superman has all of Metropolis. You know what I mean? Batman has Gotham City. Everyone always has this great grandiose thing. Spider-Man can't get further than the edge of New York State and maybe 6 or 7 hours. You know what I mean? The scale is not as huge for him.
Yeah.
All of these things happen in this pocket of this world, and it's interesting to see the denizens of the pocket of that world, have such visceral reactions.
And one thing I love about this scene is how so comic booky it is. Like there's like he stops a grocery store robbing, and then he captures like 2 jewel thieves dressed up in like balaclavas and like in a big spider web.
They really were not
Uh,
afraid to pull the giant spider web card with this movie, and bravo.
and there's
for
like and
that.
there's like newspaper headlines flying around, and he's like, "Oh yeah, who is he?" It's like I love this scene. It's my favorite part of the
No,
movie. I can't get enough of that scene.
it's intensely Raimi.
This is the scene where they have the big debut of the Spider-Man costume for this movie.
Yes.
What is your opinion on this costume?
The Raimi suit, I feel, is I think it's perfect for its time. It's a lot of people's favorite. There was a big controversy with the PS4
is.
game about this time last year, where people were like outright demanding it, and they were like, "No, you'll get what you get." And a lot of people felt like the game studio was pressured intensely into putting that suit in. People love it. People go absolutely hog fucking wild for it, and I think it's intensely a perfect suit for the era that it's in, the movie that it's in, who it was directed by. It screams
Yes.
Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. It's edgy without being like Spider-Man Unlimited edgy. It checks a lot of boxes. It retains a lot of the retro coolness of it with like the raised webbing. The color scheme is on point. It's great. I love the
Yeah.
sharpness of the eyes. It's fun without being like McFarlane big, without directly aping off of it entirely. I think very highly of the suit, but I'm hesitant to call it my favorite.
I'm a little bit less enthusiastic about the suit. I do agree that it looks really great. It looks a lot better than lots of the other superhero costumes. Like it looks better than anything in the first X-Men movie where they're all wearing like shitty leather costumes. But I do have lots of like little nitpicks. The logos, the chest logo and the back logo, they look good in this movie. But for some reason in the second one they change it and they make them look like sports car logos, and like they're really angular and sharp, and it's like, come on.
Yeah, that I can't justify.
I don't really like the Raimi Spider-Man logo. I'm not super in. It looks like he's like scary. It looks like the Venom chest logo.
Yeah.
Like when they do the black suit in 3, like they barely change it.
It borders on edgy.
Yeah. I'm not as huge of a fan of the eyes. I like more when they have the more rounded ones with the big black borders. I think the muscle suit, Tobey Maguire, even though he's like ripped in this movie, he wears like a big muscle suit and it looks kind of weird. And I'm gonna say it right now, I don't like the silver webbing. I'm not a fan of it.
I like the raised quality of it more than I like the color of it. I think if it had been black, that would have been a lot more appealing to the eye.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about the color as much as I am the raised part of it.
I think the raised is cool, but every time I see it, I just think I could peel that off really easy.
Yeah, it's kind of like a stem thing or something.
Just like, boop.
You gotta imagine like when you get like when there's little like rubber parts on your shoe or something that come off like that. Do those pop off? How often is he having to like hot glue this thing back together?
Yeah.
J. Jonah Jameson, as I mentioned, arguably. A lot of people like to point to Watchmen as a really great comic to the screen adaptation, and that works for some characters, yeah, but nothing, and I mean nothing, touches J. Jonah Jameson.
He is the perfect.
He's like a Halloween costume come to life. He's like Disney Parks quality level, like into it. He
is the character.
You buy it. You buy the whole thing. Like they give him more depth later with like the pill bottle gag and the wife on the telecom and intercom, all that. That's building off of what we had from him, but we have him very briefly in this first movie. We have him, pseudo hiring Peter. You don't have a job, freelance. And then we have him later, being assaulted and interrogated by the Goblin.
Yes.
We don't see him much, but we learn tremendous amounts about his character from just these two scenes. It's like the panel that's him. That's that angry ass guy right there. I like that they didn't modernize him. That he's straight up that guy. He looks like the 1960s J. Jonah Jameson. He just hasn't aged a day.
It's great.
Perfect, modern but timeless. Good stuff. Best ever. So Norman Osborn is squeezed out from his company by the board. Great scene there where we get a lot of fire at the board. You can't do this to me. All that good stuff.
You know how much I sacrificed.
So Norman Osborn's performance from Defoe in this movie is intense. full of fire, full of rage, but at the same time, it kind of captures that conniving element that we have from the character of Norman Osborn in the comics. That it's not really shown as much as it could have been, because he's only in this, as a person in this first movie. He's like a flashback ghost
Yeah.
in the second and third, where and it's mostly the Goblin at that. But Defoe in this movie brings a lot more of a psychotic element to it. Like he's just American Psycho waiting to happen, which is ironic. There's definitely a Bateman quality to the Raimi Osborn. So he's squeezed out of the company, super pissed. Unity Day rolls around, which I want to say that scene has to have been like a post 9/11 injection into the movie, like a New York Unity Day. Yay! Like, what the hell is Unity Day? And it's right around Thanksgiving. It's like, okay, some more wonderful CGI in that scene, by the way.
Oh my god, the balloons look so fucking terrible.
It looks like an N64 game.
The Goblin looks terrible in this scene. What do you think about the Goblin costume?
I think the Goblin costume. I have some fun anecdotes in the trivia about that. Have you seen the footage of the original animatronic mask?
Oh, that would have looked fucking sick.
There's this scene that makes my fiance just absolutely like crumble with laughter, where they like, I can't remember the exact wording. They say like, give me the most like, I don't remember the word they use, but like, no, give me the most benign face you can make. And the animatronic Green Goblin face straight up looks like it's shitting its pants. It is so bad, and I'm so glad that they went with what they went with over that.
I actually kind of think that CGI mask looks cool.
It could have worked, but
have you seen the Alex Ross designs that he did for Green Goblin?
Yeah, I must have at some point. I can't conjure them in my mind at this very moment.
He's got like a weird craggly face, and he's like wearing these like tattered robes. It looks really good.
Yeah, I dig it. I do.
My only problem, one of my problems with this costume is, and with the same with the Spider-Man costume, there's no like life to it. The eyes don't move. If he wants to show emotion, he has to like pull up his little eye windows so you can see his eyes.
Lightyear style.
Yeah, and it's just because it's one solitary green color. There's not even any purple in it. It just feels sort of.
Yeah, it was interesting, the lack of purple.
Yeah, it's too monochrome for me to really work with.
It's very military. It's very tactical, because that's what they were gunning for, was that it was a military contract apparatus of that. So, it was very camo green was, very, very about to be commonplace again.
With a funny goblin helmet.
Imagine Operation Desert Storm with everybody wearing Green Goblin outfits.
They're throwing pumpkin bombs at people and they're all going fucking crazy. Oh my god.
Pumpkin bombs.
Holy shit.
Oh my god. But yes, he skeletonizes the board of directors.
Yes. Oh my god.
Even though he hasn't. Now, is this pre or post? This is pre the Thanksgiving scene, right? He hasn't even met MJ yet. He attempts to kidnap MJ, despite never having met her and not knowing that she's dating his son, which is just a fun coincidence, I guess.
There's
millions of people. And
there's a trend in these movies that Mary Jane just gets kidnapped by the bad guys because
it's just an extension of, Parker luck. It is what it is,
I guess.
So he skeletonizes the board of directors. Him and Peter, who was there taking photos, does a Superman run and tears his shirt off, and he's the Spider-Man, and they have a confrontation. It's very Power Rangers.
Yeah, it's a very silly scene. Like there's that lady who
Green Goblin.
Like there's that lady who goes, "It's Spider-Man." But it's still a really fun scene.
They have a brief fight. Peter rips a bunch of shit up with the glider, and we get a fantastic "We'll meet again, Spider-Man," that kind of shit.
Fuck yeah.
Just classic. Does not get much better than that.
This movie and sort of the Raimi trilogy as a whole operates on this like heightened sense of reality where everything is like super big and melodramatic. Like when people have like relationship arguments, they're like super big and dramatic. And when there's villains, they get beat up. They go, we'll meet again, Spider-Man. It's like, I guess because it operates on that sort of heightened sense of reality, it makes the melodramatic elements like less It makes him stand out less, so it's not as outrageous.
That's a good thing to aim for in a comic adaptation like this, I think.
Yeah, especially if you're going for like that Silver Age style.
So from there, if I'm not mistaken, I have a bit of a gap here with what I was writing down. I was doing dishes while I was doing this.
Yes.
From there, we get the scene, if I'm not mistaken, where the Goblin assaults the Daily Bugle office trying to find a photographer that takes pictures of Spider-Man. Jonah does not give up Peter, despite the fact that he doesn't like anybody, let alone, puny Parker that takes the pictures.
That's a really great character moment. I love that.
And that's been pointed out a lot on the internet, but
Yeah.
I think it's worth pointing out that Jameson, he is slime, he is a shitty scumball of an asshole, but he would not give Peter Parker up, even though he was physically there in the building. You know what I mean?
He's a good guy at heart.
Yeah, he's not a sympathizer. He's not just gonna collaborate.
He's a very callous guy who's like, I'm always right. But he genuinely wants to protect this kid who just like showed up at his office.
We get a phenomenal scene of the Green Goblin putting Peter to sleep with some just straight up
sleep.
That I think is probably my favorite Green Goblin moment in the whole movie.
Oh my God.
It's tied with Godspeed Spider-Man with me.
Godspeed Spider-Man.
Just sleep. That's all he could say right then at that moment. He's like Palpatine levels of I love being evil. It's wonderful. So the Goblin kidnaps and attempts to recruit Spider-Man. We can keep doing this over and over because I fucking love it. We can keep fighting until I kill you or you kill me. It's just gonna keep happening. Or you can team up with me and we can be the 1% and we can take on the world and we'll get married, retire one day. Spider-Man, it'll be great.
This is a very silly movie. I don't know if you knew this.
Silly. He puts him to sleep, kidnaps him, gives him an ultimatum, slaps him on the head,
slaps him on the back of the head.
And he flies away. He leaves him. We could have unmasked him. He could have just slit his throat, but he doesn't care. He's
a
Norman Osborn
fellow.
At this point. He got his revenge. That board of directors is gone. He got away with it.
He has like weird non-motivation in this movie. He becomes the Green Goblin because he wants to get his the contract from the military, right? So he becomes a Green Goblin, then he becomes crazy. And then, he did the test, and then he loses the government contract, and then he gets kicked out of his company. So it was like, okay, I'm going to be the Green Goblin and kill everybody on the board.
I'm going to do that.
He kills everybody on the board, and now he has full control of the company. And then he's just like, well, I guess I'll go like blow shit up so I could fight Spider-Man now, and I guess I'll try to make him my friend.
My new full-time job is fighting Spider-Man and hating my son.
I guess there's like a complete lack of motivation. He's just like, I guess I'll do evil shit.
And you would think that would make people want to tear the character apart, but people, for the most part, react very positively to Dafoe.
He's still really great. It's just like, sure.
So shortly thereafter, Peter stops a gang of thugs from harming MJ in the classic alley sequence. We get the kiss, which was horrible to film.
Kirsten Dunst doesn't wear a bra for some reason.
2002, women's liberation. It's 21st century. Get over it. The kiss was apparently really hard to film because Tobey Maguire's sinuses kept filling up with water, and I think that's really, really funny. I like the the mental image of just him sputtering every time they try.
Just imagining you get water up your nose, like coughing up all over her face.
We get some, Peter is always very emotionally and romantically tugged in like 5 directions at any given time. That's part of his character.
And like, I completely forgot. I wrote it down in my notes. MJ is like in a relationship with Harry, and she's just like making out with Spider-Man. Like, what the fuck?
Look, I feel like Spider-Man saved my life and then made out with me. If I came home and told my fiance that, they'd be like, "Well, I'm not thrilled, but Spider-Man." What do you?
It's just like MJ is like out here, like, "Oh, I love you, Spider-Man."
Like, I'm sorry, but B, you get it, right? It was Spider-Man.
It was Spider-Man.
It's fine. The hall pass, the spider pass. But yeah, you get MJ getting a sense of, she's with Harry. You get a sense that she likes Peter, but she also is falling in love with Spider-Man. which is inherently, you know, a very Spider-Man kind of story. Peter is a loser in life, and he's definitely a loser at love. Probably even more so than life. But yeah, we get a very, very frankly iconic piece of cinema again with that upside down kiss. I wonder if that was written that way or if that was more of just like a Raimi, like, hey, I think that'll look cool.
I don't know.
Who knows? So we get a scene very shortly thereafter. We get a burning building. Very great Spider-Man dialogue outside where he's talking with the cops about, I'm not coming back, Chief. He is then assaulted by a stock sound effect that turns out to be the Green Goblin.
This is a very silly movie.
If there's a way for you to play that sound effect,
I'm gonna try to sneak it in there.
It took me out of it then, and it takes me out of it now.
He like has like a soundboard on his suit, and he carries around this like little old lady rag that he hides behind. Oh, I'm a little old lady. Oh, scary! I'm the Green Goblin.
It's so surprise. It wasn't a screaming dot wave file. It was Norman Osborn, and
So stupid.
He throws some knife bombs at Peter, cuts him up pretty bad. They fight in a burning building for a while, and then Peter just kind of leaves. Even though Norman went to the trouble of lighting this apartment building on fire, he easily could have been like, and shot a bunch of people with his glider outside. Peter just leaves.
Nobody says no to me.
So, we get a great Thanksgiving scene. Very, very tense. We've all had tense, not tense as this, maybe, I would hope, but very tense Thanksgivings. Peter and Harry are living together in a loft apartment in New York that must cost $5,000 a month. It is insane. Aunt May and MJ.
Well, hey, Norman is bankrolling that thing.
Yeah, easily. No worries.
They talk about it.
Norman is coming over to visit. He, is disappointed by every breath that Harry takes. So Harry is very, keyed up about him meeting working class MJ. It does not go well. Norman acts like a coked out lunatic the whole time, and then
Peter just has a complete dead expression, which looks really stupid. He's like,
Peter just ate like 2 full Xanax bars before he came here.
It's just like he's reacting to nothing that's happening in front of him.
We have that great blood drop moment when Peter comes out
when he's on the ceiling that nobody knows how to look up.
And Peter comes out. He's bleeding through his shirt. Norman has like an orgasm at the table when he realizes that Peter is Spider-Man, gets up, leaves, says a bunch of misogynistic shit that MJ absolutely hears through the door. Harry does not stick up for her. Everything implodes, and Peter still just sits there at the table.
Just like,
he doesn't realize he just got found out. He's just like, wow. Yes, Norman realizes that Peter Parker is the Spider-Man. So to strike at him, he decides to not attack, not hurt, but just scare the shit out of Aunt May one night.
Attack his heart.
Bombs her. He bombs the bedroom while she's praying, and then I imagine just leaves because she's in the hospital.
And then he makes her finish the prayer and then leave.
Pray and then leaves because Norman's a good Catholic. But I love that he doesn't. We don't even see him leave. We just cut to the hospital with Peter visiting.
He's like, like he just sat there until the ambulance showed up,
like Pennywise or something on the glider.
Oh my
God. Peter realizes that his identity has been compromised. He doesn't know who the Goblin is, but the Goblin knows who he is. So he stays with Aunt May. MJ decides to visit during recovery, and we get a lot of soul bearing. Peter goes on a very romantic soliloquy that is a little muddled through Tobey's delivery. All of his romantic dialogue ends up sounding exactly like this, no matter what he's saying. You know what I mean?
How the fuck does she not know that he's Spider-Man?
Yeah, they sound exactly the same. There is a fun little bit at the end after they kiss at the funeral. She kind of has starts and is like, "Oh wow, that kiss! I like a recognition kind of thing." Yeah. But the sign should have been there much sooner. She's not terribly bright in these movies. She's a great actress. MJ is a great actress and a great waitress and a good person. But she's
not a good actress. They said that she needed acting lessons.
Well, that's one critic.
And then there's a whole subplot in Spider-Man 3 about how she's not a good actress.
True. I suppose that's true. So Peter, he's comfortable enough to admit his feelings for MJ. He attempts to make a phone call to talk to her about it, and he gets the Goblin hotline instead, telling him that he's got his girlfriend and that they should come hang out at the bridge.
Yeah, hang out at Makeout Point.
Peter leaves Aunt May at the hospital and confronts the Goblin at the bridge, and he is essentially made to make a choice. It's really reminiscent of the death of Gwen Stacy. We have the Goblin holding MJ on one edge of the top of the bridge, and at the other side, a cable car just full of kids. Which is
why are like the Boy Scouts in a cable car in the middle of the night?
It's like midnight. By the
What the fuck are they there?
Tour in New York. We get some really, really decently made combat action. He zips around. He does manage to save both. We get an intensely patriotic. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
When you messing with a guy who's trying to save a couple of kids.
Fucking walking here.
That is the one scene they added in after 9/11.
Oh yeah, I do know that. That's a fact. Yeah.
They're like, hey, we're New York, and then they just keep doing that in all three movies.
Just throwing lead pipes and beer cans at the Goblin. That's what enables Peter to be able to save both the children and Mary Jane, who he lowers onto a trash barge.
Yeah, the old sea dog shows up on his trash barge to save him. And he's like, yeah.
Right, and so then the friendly New York City caricatures save him.
Yes.
Peter and the Goblin then take their fight to some kind of abandoned brickwork structure. I wasn't sure if it's a church.
I don't know.
Some kind of old decaying brick structure. Great set piece.
Great set piece.
I think. It reminds me thematically, that whole scene of the final duel with the Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. It's lit a lot of the same way. A lot of gray, blue, black light. It's very brutal. Peter gets the shit bombed out of his face.
Yeah.
He crushes Norman with a brick wall, which in the next scene is just rubble. When literally in the cut before it was a solid wall. That makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, Harry gets a bomb in the face in Spider-Man 3. He's got a huge scar, but Peter gets a bomb in the face in the first movie, and his mask is messed up.
Yeah, well, that was some bulletproof spandex. It's fine. You can get that at Joann Fabric for $4.99 a yard.
Of course.
So yeah, there's a great combat sequence. Wonderful line delivery from Peter about I should say. There's an unmasking. Norman's getting his absolute dick handed to him after he makes some threats against MJ. Peter gets a second wind, knocks the shit out of him, and Peter tries playing the "It's me, it's Norman, it's me, Peter, don't do it." He tries to schmooze in on him. Yeah, be like a son to me. And Peter hits him with the "I had a father. His name was Ben Parker."
That's a good line.
Norman tries to pull one last fast one on him and spear him with the glider. Spider-Man does the very obvious Spider-Man thing to do and jumps about 3 feet in the air. And the glider pins Norman to the wall, killing him. His final wishes, he tells Peter, is to not tell Harry. Which, I get what Norman meant by that, but it also, if he had just told Harry,
hey, your dad is the Green Goblin and killed a bunch of people, and also he tried to kill me, and also he killed himself with his glider.
Yeah, but yeah, he spoiler, he does not tell Harry. Probably should have, but he doesn't. So we get a nice little wrap up sequence. Peter's caught delivering Norman's body to the, I almost said the Franco home. I guess that is what it is. James Franco, Harry is devastated at the death of his father and solely pins the blame on Spider-Man. Spider-Man's not really known for carrying twin katanas through the streets of New York, so I don't...
Yeah, he's got 2 gigantic stab wounds, and yes, of course, the classic stabber, Spider-Man.
Maybe if he was maybe I was drunk and it was just Deadpool and I was squinting or something, but that's not, it is what it is. Peter, he has to hide from his best friend.
We have to have a reason for Harry to be mad at Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's the new villain. So Peter's caught in the situation where he has to hide that he's Spider-Man from multiple people for different reasons. So that's kind of where the movie wraps up.
That's a really great Spider-Man moment. even though Aunt May and MJ both get their lives endangered, even though they don't know Peter is Spider-Man.
Yeah, just coincidence.
It works out.
So the movie wraps at Norman's funeral. Peter kind of steps aside from the ceremony and goes to Uncle Ben's grave and has a conversation with MJ. She wants to be with him, and he gives some very vague non-answers that almost make it seem like he's like, "No, we can't be."
Yeah, he's like, I can't be with you, which sows the seeds for the worst subplot of Spider-Man 2, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, and they kiss, and she kind of recognizes it. He steps away, and then the Danny Elfman fades to Nickelback, and that's the film.
That song is really nostalgic for me, even though I think Nickelback sucks.
For a lot of people, yeah. And I should say we do close on more of that wonderful "Who am I?" I'm Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, he swings away. That's a really great scene at the end, and he plants on the gigantic American flag and flies right into the screen.
So now that I have gotten, the bare bones of the plot, well, a lot more than the bare bones, actually. That was more.
We went through the whole thing.
I wasn't sure how I wanted to go about this. I feel like that was
this is great.
Good blend of what I was aiming for. So I've got some fun facts and some trivia now here. As a lot of people probably know, there is no CGI on the sequence where Peter catches all that shit on the lunch tray post spider bite. It took 156 takes, but that was a completely organic take. With the only aid he had was that the tray was adhered to his hand with some sticky stuff. But he caught all that shit after 156 tries.
You'd think after try like 20, they'd be like, "Can we just like not do this?"
That's like a whole day of shooting, I can't imagine they would even bother now. I imagine that would probably.
I feel like Sony would be really upset. Like, what the fuck are you doing, spending all this money on a day of shooting just to get this one shot done? You fucking madman.
Apparently, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine was supposed to appear in the film in some capacity.
And I heard about that.
The only reason that he did not is that they couldn't find his suit.
Oh my god, his like shitty ass leather costume.
Yeah, he
could just walk around with a tank top. You know who it was.
No, he has to have the crappy leather suit. That's his iconic crappy leather suit.
That would be so cool.
Defoe did 90% of his own stunts as the Green Goblin.
Dude's rock.
Is bizarre to me because you think of his stunts. He gets beat up a lot. He gets flipped and kicked and stuff like that. But the idea of him standing on that glider in front of that green screen is just hilarious to me.
So good. That man has dedication.
Oh yeah, tremendous dedication. He should be the mayor. He should be the mayor of New York.
He should be the president of the world.
Oscorp Parker 2020. Osborne.
Osborne Parker 2020. Let's get it done.
So September 11th had a definite impression on this movie. It caused a recall of a teaser poster featuring Spider-Man with the reflection of the New York skyline in his eyes that had very prominent Twin Towers in it.
I think that the shot where they like zoom, like it's the Twin Towers in his eye and they zoom out and then he shoots a web and he swings away. I think they still use that in the final cut of the film in that big montage I was talking about.
I think it's doctored, but it is part of that, yeah. There's also a teaser trailer released where he webs a helicopter between the Twin Towers that they also could not use, which probably would have been very iconic had it been allowed to release.
That trailer is so cool. I'm going to put a link to it in the description of the YouTube video or the podcast if you're listening to it on a podcast app, because that trailer is so cool. I'm going to put a link there.
Absolutely. Sam Raimi was a proposed favorite for taking over this project at Sony because he is a comic book collector. I'm not sure if you were aware of that or not.
I had heard that.
Do you have an idea of how many comic books Sam Raimi owned in 2002?
I do not.
Over 25,000, and
holy shit!
I have to assume that number is much larger 20 years later.
Oh my god!
Yeah, he knew his shit. He was a fan. Conversely, Tobey Maguire had never read a Spider-Man comic in his life.
That makes a lot of sense.
It really does. Leo DiCaprio was almost Peter Parker. There's a lot
I've
of
heard about
there's a
that.
lot of actors I have written down. I think it's interesting thinking about like who could have been other characters, that kind of thing. But as far as Spider-Man goes, it was really largely just a tough call between Leo and Toby for the studio. As far as other characters like that, there were some other character actors for the Green Goblin considered. Nicolas Cage.
Oh my
Wrap your
god!
mind around that one. That would have been
Holy shit!
John Malkovich, who was also supposed to later be a different Spider-Man villain, but you know, we got that.
Which we'll get into.
Mel Gibson, which there's a huge chance I can't imagine Mel Gibson as the Green Goblin without him screaming like racial slurs at
Oh my god!
Spider-Man.
Holy shit!
Derogatorily Jewish names and stuff.
Yeah, he just starts yelling about Jewish people while he's flying around.
Cause all the wars in the world, Spider-Man.
My god.
So rough. Brad Dourif, horror legend Brad Dourif as the Green
Brad
Goblin.
Dourif. That, you know what? I could see that. He would probably be pretty good.
Absolutely. It's all in the voice and it's all in the face for him. He's in one.
I think John Malkovich and Brad Dourif are probably the two best options if they weren't going to go with Willem Dafoe.
Brad Dourif has this really, really, really great one-off episode of the X-Files that he's a villain in, and I think that alone has me convinced he could have been a good Norman Osborn. It's called Beyond the Sea. I think it's season 2, episode something. Check it out.
He's in Exorcist 3, and I know he's really good in that, but I haven't seen it.
Great actor, phenomenal. John Travolta.
What the fuck?
John Travolta was considered for the role of Norman Osborn. No, super pass.
No, absolutely not.
And finally, Robert De Niro. Mr. Jokester himself, Robert De Niro. Maybe. I don't think he has the right intensity. Norman, that's the only word I have for Norman Osborn, is that he's intense, and I don't see De Niro filling those shoes. There are also some alternate J. Jonah Jamesons that could have been. Funnily enough, Stan Lee very much wanted to play J. Jonah Jameson. He actually auditioned.
And he would have been good.
He auditioned for the part, but they ended up liking J.K. Simmons more, and Stan Lee was a huge fan of J.K. Simmons' performance. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Hard not to. Bill Paxton. Gotta say, that's interesting.
It's interesting.
Paxton toes the line of too funny and a lot of the things he's in.
Yeah.
And I feel like that could have been a detriment to his performance here had he been J. Jonah Jameson.
J.K. Simmons plays it super straight.
Super straight, but so straight that it curves back around to being funny. I love Paxton, but I gotta say it sounds like disappointing to think about. Michael Keaton was almost J. Jonah Jameson as well.
Michael Keaton, the god.
Mm-hmm. The Vulture.
The Vulture, who we will talk about later.
I think that could have been fun.
I think he would have been fun.
I can hear it in his voice.
Yes.
R. Lee Ermey of every military movie ever. I can see it. I can see it. I would love to see the little mustache on him. I think that would.
I mean, if you just think of shouty guy in movies,
I can hear him screaming that he wants pictures of Spider-Man. That would work. It. And lastly, Hugh Laurie. I think that could have worked. I think Hugh Laurie's got the right face. Maybe not the right voice, but definitely the right face. So those are some fun alternate Spider-Verses out there where we have casts built of those phenomenal actors. Like we mentioned earlier, the original Green Goblin suit concept was animatronic in nature. I'm going to see if I can't dig up the link to that test footage of the suit and the mask itself.
Yeah, I'll throw it in the description.
I'll try to link you to that so we can put that there. It is absolutely... David Fincher almost directed this movie. And had he directed it, he has gone on the record to say that he would have made Gwen Stacy more of a center stage character as opposed to Mary Jane Watson. I like David Fincher. I like a lot of his projects. I can't say that I'm thrilled with the idea of him doing Spider-Man.
I feel like David Fincher makes a lot of really cerebral movies.
Very bleak movies too.
Yeah. I could see him doing like Night Gwen Stacy Died.
Exactly. I want to say that's specifically what he wanted to do.
And I feel like it's really hard to do Gwen Stacy in a movie because everyone just knows her as the Spider-Man's girlfriend who dies. So it's hard to like make people get invested in that character.
I think I would love about 30 minutes of a David Fincher Spider-Man project.
If you made a Spider-Man short film,
Yeah, but not a 2.5 hour like plot vehicle. I
David
think
Fincher, call us.
lovely. David Fincher, please come on the podcast.
Please come on the podcast.
You're a great director, but you make very bleak things, and they make me sad, and they make me not want to watch things for a while.
So those are our guests, Alex Ross and David Fincher.
Yeah, tune in next time, and we'll ask them what their favorite Spider-Man movie is. Let's see here. Franco and Maguire hate each other in real life.
Oh.
Not a lot of people know this, but Franco may or may not have made a reference to Maguire having frog-like features on the set of this first Spider-Man movie, and that sparked a feud that apparently is still going on to this day.
I mean, he's not wrong.
I don't blame him. James Franco seems like a huge asshole. To be fair, Tobey Maguire seems like a huge asshole too. So
They both seem like assholes.
I think maybe they were both just coked out at the wrong time, and Franco said something he shouldn't have. Now
They were on different ends of a coke bender, and the energies did not mingle.
Mr. Maguire, sir, do not hunt me down for saying so. You have unique features. I've known some frog-like people. I wouldn't say you're one of them. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. That's all I got as far as that one goes. They dyed James Franco's hair brown to match Willem Dafoe for more of a father-son connection. However, during a period of shooting, they forgot to do that, and in the hospital visit scene, Harry's hair is just black. And I never noticed, but I came across that.
I never noticed that either when I watched it.
Yeah, look out for that next time. Harry's hair is just black for one scene, and it's really funny. I caught it this time. It was something. So as far as the effects department goes, they actually had to do something unique for this movie. Spider-Man's effect shots with his blue and red costume had to be shot in front of a green screen, where simultaneously the Green Goblin stuff had to be shot in front of a blue screen. So they had like a dual like screen approach to that, where they had to have separate like places where they filmed those things. It was really fun.
Yeah.
Nearly done. Just got a couple things left here.
Right.
If you pay attention at the Thanksgiving dinner scene, Peter is wearing green and purple, which are normally colors associated with the Green Goblin, whereas Norman is wearing a suit that is, I want to say it's red and blue. It's definitely Spider-Man adjacent colors, but it's a fun little. Maybe it was on purpose, maybe it wasn't, but they're definitely wearing each other's colors at that dinner, which is a fun thing to notice.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Banks, who plays Betty Brant, originally auditioned for the role of Mary Jane. And I've got to say, I think she's a great Betty Brant. Definitely a more fleshed out character in the comics, but they do some stuff with her in 2 and 3.
Yeah, she's just sort of part of the Daily Bugle ensemble with like Robbie and Jonah.
Would have been interesting to see more from her, but it is what it is. Christopher Columbus almost directed Spider-Man 1 instead of Raimi, but he chose to make Harry Potter instead.
Bad choice.
Bad choice for him, but I do think that
Dropped a ball on that one.
I think that it's good for everybody, because I don't like the idea of a Chris Columbus Spider-Man. You know what I mean? I think his movies are fine. There's a certain charm to the first Harry Potter. And Home Alone is like a timeless institution, but I can't imagine that his Spider-Man would have been very like impactful.
Yeah,
especially
especially in Origin.
Like it would be the opposite of the Fincher problem. I think it would be
trying to do like a childlike whimsy to like my uncle is murdered and I feel bad about it.
Yeah, I don't buy it with Macaulay Culkin as Spider-Man.
Macaulay Culkin as Spider-Man. Oh my god, let's get it done. Macaulay Culkin, come on the podcast.
He could have been Ben Reilly.
He could have been. Oh my god,
that would have been fucking amazing.
Dude, holy shit!
I like that.
Macaulay Culkin, come on our podcast.
Please come on the podcast. Fly to Kansas City or to Florida, or just add us on Discord.
Yeah, just come on the Discord, record a podcast with us.
So my last little bit of trivia here. This is an intensely New York-centric movie, for an intensely New York-centric character. Most of it was filmed in LA, and honestly, I couldn't even tell. About 2 weeks total was shot in New York, but besides that, the movie was predominantly filmed in LA, and I gotta say, that is some good trickery. That is some good soundstage work, because a lot of it just feels New York to me. And that wraps it up for my fun fact corner for this week.
All right. let's move on to our ratings. So, Alex, what are your general thoughts on the movie? We don't have any other movies to compare this to, so we can't really do any rankings. But what would you say is your rating for this movie?
Well, to start with my general thoughts, I think that as far as origin story pictures go, this is head and shoulders above the majority of what has come out in the last few decades as far as multi-picture storytelling goes. Um, it's intensely fun. The only thing I think that has matched it in terms of like fun versus like the emotional input output I got from it was Shazam. I really enjoyed Shazam. I actually distinctly remember leaving the theater and saying to my fiance, "That felt like Sam Raimi Spider-Man," is what I said. It's a hard feeling to capture. It's a hard line to toe of like fun. It's scary in parts. I know I joked about the stock sound effect and the burning building part earlier, but there are some legitimate like decent jump scares and decent like thematic elements, as they say in the MPAA language. It it balances all these things in a way that only Sam Raimi is like good and capable at. He's very good at fun and gross, and that really shows in this movie. Not so much the gross part, but more so the spookier elements of it. I like it a lot. It is a great first chapter of the story that he was attempting to tell with this character and these characters and this set piece. And all in all things considered, I feel really comfortable giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars.
All right.
It's not perfect. There's a lot of tiny little flaws, but if you look at it as part one of three, but also if you look at it as just its own thing, it really rings true to the spirit of the character, and I think it's a totally original vision and creation from a creator.
I absolutely agree. Like I said before, I think the Raimi trilogy is very melodramatic, and we'll get more into more of that in 2 and especially 3. But the cheesiness and like the heightened reality, it makes that not as egregious. This is probably the best version of the Spider-Man origin story across like any form.
I definitely
Uh,
agree.
I understand why. Because it is so perfect, essentially. I understand why they went in like a completely different direction for the Amazing movies, and I understand why the MCU was like, "You already know this. We don't need to talk about this."
You guys
Uh,
really need to see this old man get shot again?
do you really need this? No. Uh, but yeah, it's a true blueprint. When somebody asks you like, "Oh, what is Spider-Man's origin?" Just show them this movie. You don't really need to talk about anything else. Yeah, this
Absolutely.
is a 4.5 star movie. It's really good. So yeah, that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. If you've got a question or a comment that you want us to read on next week's episode, be sure to send it to us at our email address, spideysignalspodcast@gmail.com, or shoot us a DM on our Twitter at SpideySignals. Next week, we're going to cover Spider-Man 2. So until then, stay responsible. Bye.
Thanks for listening.
In the morning, the spider.